I was lucky enough to marry Ree Smith, working together on our family ranch west of Pawhuska. I don't think she ever wants to see another feed bill for the rest of her life.
I'm going to take them ranch-style chicken sandwiches, one of my husband's favorite sandwiches. They're grilled chicken breast top.
You've probably seen it, that dramatic thumbnail of Ladd Drummond and Ree Drummond, with headlines hinting at tragedy. Maybe it made you worry about Ree, the warm, familiar face from your screen. But today, we're setting the record straight. Because the real story isn't just different. It's deeper, more emotional, and far more powerful than clickbait ever suggests. So what's really going on behind those headlines? Before we get into any of the drama, let's talk about who Ladd Drummond actually is. Because if you only know him as Ree's quiet cowboy husband in the background, you are missing a huge part of the picture. Ladd Drummond was born in Nebraska and is a fourth-generation cattle rancher. Let that sink in for a second. 4 generations. His great-grandfather, Fred Drummond, originally from Scotland, came to America and married Addie Gentner from Kansas. Together, they planted the seeds of what would eventually become one of the largest private land empires in the entire United States. We are not exaggerating when we say empire. By the way, we'll get to the numbers in a moment, and they will genuinely shock you. Ladd grew up in Pawhuska, Oklahoma. He went to college at Arizona State University, something that becomes relevant in a very funny wedding story we'll tell you in just a minute, and then came back to Oklahoma to do what his family had always done: work the land, raise cattle, and live the kind of life that most people only see in movies. He co-owns Drummond Land and Cattle Company with his brother Tim. The company was founded by their father Chuck in the early 1990s, and it sits at the heart of an operation spanning over 433,000 acres across Oklahoma. That is 675 square miles of land. That is larger than many American cities. That makes the Drummond family the 23rd largest private landowners in the entire United States, and the single largest private landowners in the state of Oklahoma. And if you're wondering what kind of money that translates to, Ladd Drummond's net worth is estimated at around $200 million. The family has also earned tens of millions through government contracts, specifically for maintaining wild horses on their pastures under agreements with the Bureau of Land Management. This is a family that does not just own a ranch. This family is a dynasty. But here's the thing about Ladd. He is not flashy about any of it. He is a guy in the background of Ree's show, in his Wranglers and boots, doing ranch work, rarely saying much, letting his actions speak for themselves. He is what people in Oklahoma would simply call a cowboy. And that image, that quiet, rugged, get-things-done attitude, is exactly why what happened on March 2021 was so terrifying. Knowing who Ladd is, it makes you wonder, how did this quiet cowboy meet the woman who would change his life forever? But before we get to the accident, we have to talk about Ree. Because you cannot tell Ladd's story without telling hers, and together, they are one of the most genuinely interesting couples in American media. Ree Drummond was born in Marie Smith on January 6, 1969, in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. She grew up in a town built on oil money, went to college at the University of Southern California in Los Angeles, and fully planned to move to Chicago for law school after graduation. She was a city girl, through and through. The last thing she expected was to end up on a cattle ranch in the middle of the Oklahoma plains. But then she came home for a visit one night, went out with some friends, and walked into a bar. And there was a man, a tall man in Wrangler jeans and cowboy boots, sipping a bottle of beer. He had icy blue eyes. He didn't say much. And Ree, by her own account, was completely and immediately fascinated. She later nicknamed him the Marlboro Man, after those old cigarette ads of the rugged cowboy, and that name stuck. But here's the twist. After that first meeting, for months passed. Nothing. Not a call, not a message, nothing. Ree figured it was a one-time spark and went back to planning her Chicago life. Then one day, the phone rang. It was him. He asked her out. And that first date changed everything. By Ree's own account, their first kiss that night was so significant that she later wrote, "When that kiss was over, my life as I'd always imagined it was over, too." She canceled Chicago. She canceled law school. She chose a ranch. She chose him. They got married on September 21, 1996. During the reception, Ladd disappeared, Guests were celebrating. Ree was looking around, and Ladd was in the men's locker room watching his alma mater, Arizona State, face off against Nebraska, the defending national champions at the time. Arizona State pulled off a massive upset. Ladd celebrated both his wedding and the football win that same night. Ree has told this story many times with full affection because this is exactly the man she married, and she would not have him any other way. The newlyweds honeymooned in Australia and then settled into the Drummond family ranch about 8 miles west of Pawhuska, Oklahoma. Ree had gone from planning a life in a Chicago high-rise to living in the house where her husband grew up, surrounded by cattle, horses, wide-open prairie, and rolling Oklahoma hills. And she absolutely loved it. So they found each other, got married, and started life on the ranch. In 2006, Ree started a blog called The Pioneer Woman. It was simple at first, recipes, stories about ranch life, photos of the vast Oklahoma landscape. She wrote honestly, warmly, and with a kind of self-deprecating humor that people immediately connected with. She was not pretending to be a celebrity. She was just a woman who had made a wild choice to live on a ranch, and she was sharing what that actually looked like. The blog exploded, millions of readers, awards, and attention from publishers and TV networks. In 2009, she published her first cookbook, The Pioneer Woman Cooks, Recipes from an Accidental Country Girl, and became a bestseller almost immediately. In 2011, the Food Network came calling. The TV show The Pioneer Woman premiered that August, and Ree Drummond became a household name. As of today, the show has aired more than 35 seasons. She has published multiple best-selling cookbooks and a memoir. She has a product line at Walmart, kitchenware, home goods, clothing, all in her signature colorful, floral, cheerful style. She has appeared on Good Morning America, Today, The View, and Fox and Friends. Then, together with Ladd, she took things even further. In 2016, they opened a Mercantile in downtown Pawhuska, a restaurant, bakery, and retail store housed in a renovated 100-year-old building. Ladd himself admitted 2 weeks before opening, "I told Ree we might have lost our minds." But they hadn't. The Merc became a tourist destination. People started driving from across the state and then across the country to eat at Ree Drummond's restaurant in a tiny Oklahoma town. They kept going. In 2018, they launched a boarding house, a cowboy-themed bed and breakfast. Then came P-Town Pizza and Charlie's Sweet Shop, an ice cream parlor. Together, the Drummonds have been credited with revitalizing downtown Pawhuska, which was struggling economically before the Pioneer Woman brand put it on the map. With the empire growing and life on the ranch thriving, no one could have predicted the day that would nearly change everything. March 10, 2021. It was a windy day in Osage County, Oklahoma. A grass fire had broken out near the Drummond Ranch. Ladd and his 21-year-old nephew Caleb each took a fire rig to fight the blaze. Visibility on the gravel roads was nearly zero. Heading in opposite directions, the two trucks collided head-on. Caleb was ejected about 70 feet and rushed to St. John's Medical Center in Tulsa with critical injuries. Ladd, surprisingly, was standing stunned, stiff, but refusing medical attention. As Ree later explained, he wanted paramedics to focus on Caleb and, in true cowboy fashion, didn't want to admit he was hurt. He drove himself to the hospital in Pawhuska. Once there, doctors discovered he had broken his neck in 2 places. One fracture, Ree wrote, was very close to being catastrophic. Ladd underwent surgery at St. John's to stabilize one of his neck fractures. His neurosurgeon used rods and hardware to repair the more severe break, while the second fracture was left to heal naturally. That meant weeks in a neck brace and a slow, careful recovery. One moment stood out. Their daughter Alex's wedding was just weeks away, and Ree joked they might have to bling out Ladd's neck brace, because no matter what, he was going to walk his daughter down the aisle, and they were simply grateful he could. Both Ladd and Caleb were eventually released to recover at home. A month later, Ree shared a heartfelt message of gratitude, choosing to focus not on the accident, but on the overwhelming love and support they received. About a month after the accident, Ladd and Ree's children reported that their dad was doing well. His mobility was a little limited, but he was still present and healing. By May, as planned, Ladd was there for Alex's wedding, neck brace and all. He walked his daughter down the aisle. Exactly 1 year after the accident, Ree posted an update saying Ladd was doing great and was basically back to his old routines. He was lifting weights, riding his horse, feeding cattle, and doing the work on the ranch he always did. She noted that his neck was still a little stiff and probably always would be, joking that he could no longer whip his head around quickly when she called him from the other room. The man survived a near-catastrophic neck fracture from a fire truck collision, had surgery to put rods in his spine, wore a neck brace for months, walked his daughter down the aisle, and within a year was back on horseback, lifting weights and managing hundreds of thousands of acres of Oklahoma ranch land. That is the real story of Ladd Drummond. But then the internet exploded with a story that wasn't true. In June 2024, a YouTube video with alarming claims about Ree's tragic diagnosis and Ladd saying goodbye went viral, racking up hundreds of thousands of views and sparking real panic among fans. People flooded comment sections asking if she was okay, sharing the video, and searching for answers that didn't exist. Because the story wasn't true,